This is Turkmenistan, a country sitting on oceans of natural resources, yet trapped in poverty and silence. A land of endless deserts, shining marble cities, and golden statues that touch the sun. But behind that glow lies a darker truth: hunger, fear, and one of the most secretive dictatorships in the modern world. On paper, Turkmenistan should be one of the richest countries on earth. It holds the fourth largest natural gas reserves in the world, about 13.6 trillion cubic meters. Enough to power entire continents for decades. You would expect its 7.6 million citizens to live like Kuwait or Qatar, rich, modern, and comfortable life. But the truth is the opposite. Salaries are low, prices are high. Food shortages happen again and again, and inflation keeps eating people's savings. All of this raises a simple question. How did a nation with such enormous natural resources end up here? To understand that, we have to look beyond the marble buildings and golden statues. The answer lies in Turkmenistan's history and geography, in the leaders who ruled it, and in a system built to protect power instead of helping people. The country sits on enormous natural gas reserves, yet the people who live above that wealth still fight every day just to live a normal life. Turkmenistan sits in the heart of Central Asia. To the north lies Kazakhstan, to the east Uzbekistan, to the southeast Afghanistan, to the south Iran, and to the west the Caspian Sea. Most of its land is covered by the Karakum Desert, a sea of sand stretching endlessly toward the horizon. Only a few green oases break the endless stretch of desert in Turkmenistan. These small patches of life exist because of the Amu Darya River, which flows in from Afghanistan and brings water to an otherwise dry land. The rest of the country is covered by sand, rocks, and wind-shaped hills. Summers are extremely hot and dry, while winters turn bitterly cold. Yet under this harsh and empty land lies incredible wealth. The soil hides oil, minerals, and one of the largest natural gas reserves in the entire world. Turkmenistan's location has always made it special. For thousands of years, it was a meeting point between empires and civilizations. Traders once crossed its deserts as part of the ancient Silk Road, connecting China with the Middle East and Europe. Along these routes, goods, ideas, and cultures moved freely, but so did armies. Great empires came and went through this land: the Persians, the Arabs, the Mongols, and later the Russians. Each one left its influence, and each one took something valuable with them, but none would leave a deeper mark than the Soviet Union. In the early 20th century, as the Russian Empire transformed into the Soviet state, Turkmenistan was absorbed into its control. By the 1920s, it became one of the faraway republics of the Soviet Union, ruled directly from Moscow. Factories and pipelines were built, and new cities began to rise across the desert. On the surface, it looked like progress, but the purpose was never to develop Turkmenistan for its own people. It was simply to feed the Soviet machine. Gas, cotton, and raw materials flowed out of Turkmenistan. In return, power, money, and decisions flowed in from Moscow. By the 1980s, Turkmenistan had become a quiet and forgotten corner of the Soviet Empire. Life was strictly controlled by the Communist Party. The state decided what you could say, where you could work, and even what you could believe. There was no democracy, no free speech, and no private ownership. Yet there was order and stability, the kind that feels safe only until it suddenly disappears. And that moment came in 1991. The Soviet Union collapsed, and across Central Asia, countries rushed to declare independence. But in Turkmenistan, there was no revolution, no uprising, no celebration of freedom. The same officials who had served Moscow simply stayed in charge. They changed the flag, wrote a new anthem, and called it independence. But the system of control remained exactly the same. At the center of it all was Murat Niyazov, a lifelong communist official who had served Moscow for decades. After independence, he suddenly became president of the new Turkmenistan. In 1992, he ran for election as the only candidate on the ballot and claimed victory with more than 99% of the vote. What looked like democracy on paper was in reality just a continuation of dictatorship under a different title. Niyazov ruled the country like a king. He renamed himself Turkmenbashi, which means head of the Turkmen. His face appeared everywhere, on currency, on giant billboards, and on television screens that praised him from morning until night. He built massive marble palaces in the desert, while ordinary people stood in long lines just to buy bread. He was not satisfied with power alone. He wanted worship. Niyazov wrote a book called Ruhnama, or the Book of the Soul, which mixed history, religion, and his own life story. It became mandatory reading in schools. You had to study it to get a driver's license or even a government job. He said that reading it 3 times would guarantee a place in heaven. People were forced to memorize his words as if they were sacred. He went further, renaming the months of the year after himself and his mother. He banned opera, ballet, and even beards, saying they were not part of Turkmen culture. In the capital, he ordered the construction of thousands of monuments, all dedicated to himself. The most famous was a 40-foot golden statue that slowly rotated throughout the day so that his face would always look toward the sun. While he built symbols of greatness, life for ordinary people became harder. Hospitals outside the capital were shut down, and Niyazov once declared that if citizens became sick, they could simply come to Ashgabat. It was a statement that showed how disconnected he had become from his own people. His rule turned into a strange mix of propaganda, personality worship, and cruelty. When Niyazov died in 2006, most people hoped the nightmare would end, but instead it was simply passed on. His successor was Berdymukhamedov, his former dentist and health minister. He promised modernization and change, but within a few years he built his own cult of personality. He called himself Arkadag, meaning the protector. State TV turned him into a superhero. He was shown racing horses, DJing at parties, performing rap songs, and even shooting targets with perfect accuracy. The ministers clapped like their lives depended on it, because they probably did. And like every ruler before him, he built golden statues. One showed him riding a horse. Another was dedicated to his favourite dog breed, the Alabay, a giant shepherd dog. While his people queued for bread, he spent millions unveiling a 50-foot gold statue of the dog in the middle of the capital. Behind all the comedy and absurdity was a very real horror. Freedom House rated Turkmenistan 1 out of 100 on its Global Freedom Index, one of the lowest in the world. Journalists vanished. Citizens who criticised the regime disappeared into prisons, never to be seen again. The internet was censored. Most foreign websites were blocked. Even using a VPN could land you in jail. The economy was collapsing too. The official exchange rate of the currency became meaningless. On the black market, $1 could be worth 10 times more than the state rate. Families spent nearly all of their income on food, yet on television, everything looked perfect. The president smiled, the marble city gleamed under the desert sun, and the golden dog statue shone brightly as if nothing was wrong. After ruling the country for 15 years, Gurbanguly Berdymukhamedov made a surprising announcement in 2022. He said he was stepping down as president, but it wasn't a retirement, it was a transfer. His son Serdar Berdymukhamedov had just turned 40, which was conveniently the minimum age required to run for president. That rule had been changed a few years earlier by none other than his father. In the election that followed, Serdar officially won with 73% of the vote. There was no real competition, no open debate, and no freedom to choose. It was not democracy, it was inheritance. People hoped that a younger leader might bring new ideas or open the country to the world, but those hopes quickly faded. The faces changed, yet the same system stayed firmly in place. The Berdymukhamedov family simply tightened its grip on power. Shortly after the election, the constitution was changed again. A new body called the People's Council was created, and it was made even more powerful than the presidency itself. Gurbanguly, the former president, was immediately appointed as its lifelong chairman. Now the father and son rule together. Serdar handles official meetings, speeches, and foreign visits, while his father remains the real power behind the scenes. Inside government offices across Turkmenistan, two portraits hang side by side, the elder Berdymukhamedov and his son smiling together above the nation they both control. Today, Turkmenistan is not just ruled by an authoritarian government, it is completely sealed off from the world. Foreign journalists are not allowed to enter, and even local reporters who try to speak the truth are silenced. Ordinary citizens can't travel freely, and leaving the country is extremely difficult. Every phone call can be monitored, and people know that their conversations might be recorded. So most live in quiet fear, careful about what they say and who they say it to. There is no independent media. Every news broadcast begins with praise for the leader and ends with stories about how great life supposedly is. The internet is one of the slowest on the planet, and almost all social media platforms, YouTube, WhatsApp, Telegram, are blocked. People can't express opinions online, so they whisper in private instead, afraid that even a wrong word could get them in trouble. Life outside the capital is even harder. In rural areas, food shortages are severe. Bread, flour, and cooking oil are rationed, and families often spend hours standing in long lines under the burning desert sun just to buy a few basic items. The United Nations once reported that around 800,000 people in Turkmenistan faced serious food insecurity, the highest number in the entire post-Soviet region. Public services barely function, hospitals lack basic medicine, and schools still use outdated textbooks. Corruption touches every part of daily life. Whether it's business contracts, government tenders, or trade deals, everything is controlled by the president's relatives and their closest allies. Ordinary citizens have no say, no power, and no escape. Now, many people wonder that why doesn't the world do anything about this? The answer is simple. Turkmenistan has something everyone wants, and that is natural gas. Turkmenistan sits on one of the largest gas fields on Earth, known as Galkinish. Beneath the desert lies a massive sea of methane, a resource so valuable that it could power entire nations for decades. And one country, more than any other, depends on it, and that is China. Pipelines stretch directly from Turkmenistan's deserts into western China. Over the years, Beijing has become Turkmenistan's biggest customer and its main lender. China gave billions of dollars in loans to develop these gas fields, and in return, Turkmenistan agreed to pay back the debt through future gas exports. This created a deep dependency. Turkmenistan now relies on China not just for money, but for its entire economic survival. This dependency gives China enormous leverage and a reason to protect the regime from international pressure. For Beijing, what matters most is a stable supply of cheap gas, not human rights. Russia still buys a small amount of Turkmen gas, mostly for political reasons. Moscow wants to stop Turkmenistan from building a pipeline that could send gas directly to Europe, bypassing Russian control. This strategy of playing powers against each other has worked perfectly for the ruling family. They call it permanent neutrality. In 1995, the United Nations even recognized Turkmenistan as a neutral state. It sounds peaceful, but in reality it's a shield, a way to avoid criticism, sanctions, and interference. Because if you drive through Ashgabat, you might think that you're in a futuristic city. Endless white marble buildings, wide empty roads, golden statues, but it's all a facade, a stage set for propaganda. Turkmenistan earns billions from gas exports every year, but where does it all go? Not to the people, not to schools or hospitals. It goes into offshore accounts, luxury cars, palaces, and monuments. Transparency International ranks Turkmenistan among the most corrupt countries in the world, 165th out of 180, with a score of just 17 out of 100. Turkmenistan could have been a success story. It could have turned its natural gas into education, healthcare, and progress. It could have been the next Dubai of Central Asia. Instead, it became a cautionary tale, proof that natural wealth can destroy a nation when it's controlled by greed and fear. This is not a story of poverty by chance. It is poverty by design, a system built to keep power in the hands of a few and silence in the hearts of millions. This is what dictatorship looks like in the 21st century. For years, the rulers of Turkmenistan have made a simple offer to their people: stay silent and you'll survive. This is why there are no protests and no chaos in Turkmenistan. There is only silence, the kind that comes when people stop believing that anything can change. There is peace, but there is no life. Do hit the subscribe button if you liked this video. We will be back soon with another video. Take care.